The older, Well, good evening everyone, and welcome to our July PC Forum meeting, Progressive Christianity Forum. Welcome to those of you who are here in person and to those who are watching online. We begin by recognising that we meet tonight on the land of the Kaurna people, and we acknowledge their elders, past and present, for their custodianship of the land over innumerable generations. Now, our speaker tonight is the colourful Mark Waters, who is the Director of Uniting Care SA. By way of introduction, let me tell you that there's a lot to say about him, and Mark, over his lifetime, has had an enduring passion for social work which has expressed itself in a multiplicity of ways. For example, he was involved in the Hindley Street Youth Project, not as one of the youth there, but as a worker. In Palliative Care South Australia, and in Reconciliation SA, where he was the state manager for almost 10 years. In the 2000s, Mark was employed at Uniting Care Wesley in Port Adelaide as the manager of Employment Access, which was a service supporting people with mental health issues to find and stay in employment. Mark is a life member of the South Australian Council of Social Service and is a strong advocate for consumer participation in health, having helped to establish the Health Consumers Alliance of South Australia. Mark has a lifelong connection and involvement to uniting church congregations. And anyone who knows the Waters name in church circles in South Australia will know that he comes from good Methodist stock, which morphed into the Uniting Church in Australia in 1977. He's an active member of the Brown Place Church, where he has worshipped for the past 15 years, and our good friends there tell us that besides all the good things that he's done and is doing, besides all that, he's a great bloke. Mark was commissioned as the Director of Uniting Care SA in April 2023 and as a pastor. Uniting Care SA is the state body for the Uniting Care Network, which consists of 28 separate organisations which deliver community care, aged care, health care through St Andrew's Hospital, and education through 7 Uniting Church schools. So Mark holds this significant position in the Synod Office, from which he has oversight of this vast network of care and its connection to the Uniting Church. In this role, he has particular interests in First Nations matters, in consumer health, in young people, in mental health, social policy and advocacy. So I'm sure Mark could speak to us tonight about a wide range of topics. Within our overall theme for PC Forum for this year, the theme is Where Faith Intersects with the Critical Issues for the Church and the World. Tonight, as part of that overall theme, Mark is going to speak on the topic Critical Issues Facing the Future of Australia, with the byline, I'm not racist, but. With NAIDOC Week starting on Sunday and running for a week, it's very topical that we should have this topic tonight. And the theme for NAIDOC Week, Keep the Fire Burning. I think that's topical for this time of the year too. So we're delighted to welcome you, Mark, and we look forward with keen anticipation as to where you might lead us. That's all of mine.
Thank you, Esmond. I too would like to acknowledge that we meet on Kaurna land. This land always was and always will be Kaurna land. Land never ceded. We acknowledge the sovereignty of Kaurna elders past, present and emerging. I also recognise the cultural authority of other Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples. Nice to have Joel here with us tonight. Where are your people from, Joel? Way north. And Joel will feature a little bit later in the presentation. As the Uniting Church in Australia accepts in its preamble to the basis of union, God was in Australia since creation and has journeyed with Aboriginal peoples for over 60,000 years as they have tended their land, their culture and their spirituality. Got to remember to do the clicking. In Matthew we read, "As you've done it to one of the least of these, my brothers and sisters, you've done it to me." It is not okay in Australia for young people playing basketball in their front yard being subjected to racist slurs and swearing. The fact that these kids were Eddie Betts's children brings it to the attention of the media, but these sorts of incidents occur on a regular basis. What sort of ugly attitudes have been unleashed in Australia where people make this unacceptable behaviour their norm? And what does Eddie do? Despite the fact that he must be seething inside, he offers to sit down and talk with the perpetrators to help them understand the hurtful effects of their taunts. What incredible poise and grace Eddie showed at that time. But herein lies another problem. We often seem to put it upon the victims of such situations to resolve them. I remember in my tenure at Reconciliation South Australia, during Reconciliation Week in 2011. The Minister for Aboriginal Affairs and Reconciliation at the time, the Honourable Grace Portalese, spoke about the need to effectively tackle racism against Aboriginal people. She said research from across the world shows that racism affects people's mental and physical health, and we know that racial discrimination can significantly reduce people's opportunities. Her response was to refer the matter to the government's Aboriginal Advisory Group for practical strategies and recommended actions. For me, it was totally the wrong group to ask. Once again, it was asking the people who experienced the racism to be responsible for fixing the problem. Sure, get advice, and get advice from Aboriginal stakeholders as significant people in the conversation. But it's up to the non-Aboriginal community to solve these sticky issues. As you've done it to one of these, the least of these, my brothers and sisters, you've done it to me. Tonight's talk is titled, I'm Not Racist But. This was the title of a program that was run in schools initially through Reconciliation South Australia. And we'll explore a bit of this program and some of the materials presented. Also, when I hear the words, I'm not racist but, usually people say something discriminatory or inappropriate afterwards. This talk will range from the theoretical to the applied. It'll cover sociology, theology, data, reconciliation and the post-23 referendum world. It will be delivered mostly, but not totally, focused upon racism as experienced by Aboriginal people. When I started in the role as State Manager of Reconciliation South Australia in August 2010, Joel was on my interviewing panel as a member of the board, I put on this Closing the Gap wristband. And I wear it as a constant reminder to keep working towards justice and equity and health for Aboriginal peoples. Pretty soon after that, I started wearing the second wristband, the red one, which did read at one stage, Racism Stops With Me, which was a national campaign of the last decade. Even though the words have worn off the wristband itself, the message still resonates with me. I was once sharing a presentation with an Aboriginal colleague of mine, and she started the talk by saying, racism starts with me. I had a double take because I was sure that the national campaign that included Adam Goodes and other figureheads was Racism Stops With Me. And then she quietly explained that until every individual accepts and understands that we're all capable of judgment and prejudices, we can't stop racism. It is a constant vigilance that needs to be in us all to make sure that racism doesn't start with me. As it says in James, chapter 2, verse 4, have you not discriminated amongst yourselves and become judges with evil thoughts? We're all capable of such judgment. It is up to us to control these thoughts and think from other people's points of view. Looking at definitions of racism, prejudice, discrimination or antagonism by an individual, community or institution against a person or people on the basis of their membership of a particular racial or ethnic group. Typically one that is a minority or marginalised. Or the theory of racism, the belief that different races possess distinct characteristics, abilities or qualities, especially so as to distinguish themselves as inferior or superior to one another. We need to accept that race is a social construct. It's learned behaviour. Children don't discriminate, but are taught to. Reverend Dr. Chris Budden, in his book on sovereignty, writes on page 30, racism sits at the heart of Australia's founding story and continues to shape who we are as a people, our laws, systems and communal stories. It shapes the treatment people receive every day. Ours is a deeply white society, as many people will affirm from their experience and treatment, even in the church. This is not an easy thing for us to acknowledge. We'll have a look at a clip that we watched as part of our school's program. And some of you may have seen this already. The invisible discriminator, my assistant over there will help us to get it going. And then we'll have a bit of a discussion as to what you see.
You're not staying there, right? What do you think she's up to? Could you really rely on her? Don't make eye contact.
Well, excuse me, what about my change? And the ammo barman says,
Go on. It's only a joke.
Discrimination leads to depression and anxiety in Indigenous Australians. No one should be made to feel like crap, just for being who they are.
Turn to the person next to you and discuss which of these scenarios touched you the most and why. And for those people who are online, if you wanted to put some responses into the chat, we'd be happy to receive them as well. Let's have a couple of minutes discussing what did you see in that video.
Thirty more seconds. We've got time for a couple of quick responses. Who would like to volunteer to let us know which of those scenarios touched you and why?
enjoyed hearing.
Marie, would you like to summarise what you three were discussing?
Well, two of us spoke about the bus man. For you, it was a situation you could easily identify with. For me, I found the rejection of kindness a really hard thing to watch. In your workplace or going for an interview, you might expect some harsh treatment, but to be kindly offering a seat on a bus and just be turned down. Joel spoke about the feeling that he has the privilege of being able to walk down the street and that his skin colour allows him to not be discriminated against, but to have a son with darker skin and to know that the treatment of particularly the man in the bar was something that could easily happen.
Thank you.
We talked about the one on the bus, but we thought it was complicated. The young woman who didn't want to sit next to the Aboriginal man. Oh, sorry. The young woman who didn't want to sit next to the Aboriginal man. But she may not have wanted to sit next to him because he was a man, not because he was Aboriginal, or because he was older. I mean, it's hard to pick up what exactly is going on. I know the person experiencing it can think it's because of this or that, but it could be because of something else.
An Aboriginal friend of mine, she travelled from Elizabeth to town every day and she said that was the common experience. It's not about gender. I mean, we could be able to say, yes, maybe, but actually that is a common experience.
I think for me it was a job interview. You just situate yourself in that woman's shoes. She could have had an enormous amount of background, enormous training, enormous experience, and you could see in her eyes she was quite hopeful. And then the response comes, can I really trust you, from the other side? And what is insidious about that is that she'll never know why she didn't get the job. The woman will never have the courage or the risk of saying why. So it will just be hidden in structural, institutional racism, which shapes her destiny.
Thank you, Graham. That scenario too hits me in the guts. And as the paper gets put on the desk, the little girl knew she didn't have the job. You know, just that little movement.
In 2014, Reconciliation SA partnered with Act Now Theatre, a youth theatre company, to deliver its annual schools program. The play, commissioned Responding to Racism, was workshopped, written and performed by young people for young people. Let's hear a bit from director Edwin Kemp-Attrell. We'll just do a little bit of fiddling with our slides to make this work.
Schools Congress is a day-long anti-racism program for young people. It's been developed by Reconciliation SA and Act Now Theatre. The Schools Congress uses group discussions, games, guest speakers, live music, school planning and an interactive performance to empower young people to stop racism in their school. It focuses on young people's thoughts, experiences and ideas to action in school. Hundreds of young people are getting involved each year. The theatre performance also tours across South Australia, working in schools, hospitals, workplaces and community settings to respond to racism with a total reach of over 5,000 people. This is the third year that Reconciliation SA and Act Now Theatre have presented the Schools Congress, and we plan to continue it and expand it across the state.
So that was back in 2017 and it's kept going since then. The technique used by Act Now was forum theatre, where a series of micro through to macro racist scenarios were played out relating to Aboriginal people and the new girl at school played by Manal Yunus. Let's hear a testimonial from Manal now as one of the authors and actors in the play.
This one, Mark,
Um,
the right slide? Or
Go back one, please. That one.
just going to the second?
Yeah.
Good, good, good. Stand by, everybody. Twiddle your thumbs for a moment.
Hi. I'm gonna love you.
Today was just really awesome. I think the best thing is that the way that we do this form of theatre and this type of learning is that the kids get to really be a part of finding the answers instead of us standing up there and telling them what to do. It's very interactive, and it means that we get to kind of all enjoy the collective wisdom that's in the room, because I think we underestimate kids a lot, and a lot of the time they have ideas that are just overlooked because they're kids. And today we got to see that really come out and benefit everybody in the room.
We'll leave it on that slide for now. Thanks, Fergus. Forum theatre creates drama that has a beginning and a middle but no ending. Basically, it sets out problems and dilemmas that the actors don't know how to solve. The audience then is invited to insert themselves into the play and create a different ending. They could act as bystanders or replace actors. They could come into the play as individuals or as groups. Sometimes this sees resolution, and occasionally it caused an escalation in the conflict. Students came up with incredibly creative ways to change the outcome. None of them missed the point about the effects that racist remarks can cause. We took the program on tour. When travelling on a small 8-seater bus on the way to Port Augusta, the Aboriginal actor in the crew was describing how he would be followed around shopping centres by security guards. I was incredulous. I'd got to the age of 60 and I'd never heard of or seen such a thing. And when we went shopping at Woolies that evening in Port Augusta for food supplies to take back to our cabins, I was clearly paying the bill. The whole scenario of Errol being profiled and followed around the supermarket was played out in front of our eyes. I couldn't believe that I was seeing this. And for Aboriginal people, that's a regular occurrence. Just like buying the milk carton. In Woodner, we stopped at the petrol station and loaded up with soft drinks and snacks. When Errol, as the last in line, approached the counter, the shop attendant turned and walked out the back of the shop and ignored him. I was dumbfounded and more than a little confronted that I was seeing these things when touring a combating racism play and didn't know how to respond in real life. This is the Australia we live in. Individual and institutional racism occurs. One of the latest examples of institutional racism is where the Northern Territory Police, as reported in the Coroner's Court and the press, were describing Aboriginal people as coons and giving away awards based upon race. And that is in this century, around 2008, 2009 and beyond. For we're all baptised by one Spirit so as to form one body, whether Jews or Gentiles, slave or free, and we were all given the one Spirit to drink. ACT Now continues to perform responding to racism. It's been embedded in a program called Generations of Change so that we can become clearer upon the prize that we were offering. Let's actually aspire for change. The Forum Theatre model is expanded into programs in workplaces as well as schools. A primary school play, Like Me, Like You, has also been written and performed. My board was really clear. If you change a generation, 12 years of kids in schools, and keep producing this message year after year after year, we change their thinking. We potentially will change attitudes in society. Reconciliation Australia has been conducting a barometer every 2 years since 2014 upon how we're tracking in terms of race relations and reconciliation in Australia. I commend this 200-page report from Polity Consulting to you. The sample in 2022 included 532 Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples and 1,990 participants from the general community. These samples were weighted for age, state, territory, gender, ethnicity, etc., according to the 2021 ABS census. So, looking at some of the findings. More First Nations Australians experienced discrimination from professionals in the past 6 months, especially from police, 20%, and healthcare staff, 20%, compared to the general community, 5% and 5% respectively. 60% of First Nation Australians had experienced at least one form of racial prejudice in the past 6 months, compared to 52% in 2020. Few non-Indigenous Australians, 17%, have socialising contact with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Australians who were not close acquaintances at the time. Conversely, most First Nations Australians, 57%, do have social contact with non-Indigenous people who were not close acquaintances at the time. Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people are still more likely to agree Australia is a racist country, 57%, than the general community, 42%. Maybe Laura Tingle wasn't so far off the mark. 1 in 4 First Nations respondents continue to strongly agree Australia is a racist country, up markedly since 2018, 19%. This may reflect the ongoing negative impacts from COVID-19 stresses of the past 2 years, but also raised awareness of the ongoing systemic injustices First Nations Australians face every day. More First Nations respondents have witnessed prejudice towards others in the context of refused entry to a venue, 34%, refused service in a shop, 33%, physical violence, 35%, and verbal abuse, 49%, than 2 years ago. 94% of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders of the general community, respondents and of the general community believe it's important for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people to have a say in their affairs. 47% of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people feel governments need to do a lot more to close the gap in health, compared to 35% of the general community. Early in August 2016, Bill Leak published a racist cartoon stereotyping Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander fathers and depicting them as drinking, shoeless and not knowing their children's names. Nice to have Joel here tonight. He responded by posting a photo on Twitter of him and his 2 children, Ava and Isaiah, taken somewhere in the city. He created the tagline #IndigenousDads and thought nothing of it. Within a day, his phone was going off and First Nations fathers and children responded in droves to recognise the importance of the family connection as a parent with their children. The #IndigenousDads movement was well and truly born. Joel went on to give a TED talk later that year, and that's well worth accessing online. And we embedded the #IndigenousDads into our school program. One on the left, this is my dad, who loves his kids always. Love my dad. Over on the right is sporting legend He knows my name, for your information. My father, the most amazing and important man in my life, so much love. And on the right, his name is Quinn. He loves story time with Daddy. John Kinsella, two-time Olympian, Vietnam vet, father, an all-round hero, my uncle John Kinsella. My child is my life, the two number 7s. The sadness for me was that Bill Leake and the champions of free speech in the right-wing media of the country tried to justify this stereotyping and vilification as freedom of the press. Our voices need to be heard to say that this is not okay. Targeting the Aboriginal justice system at a time when horrific abuses against Aboriginal young people were being perpetrated in Don Dale in the Northern Territory is not okay. Whole stadia booed Adam Goodes for being who he was. They didn't get the fact that he called out a racial slur, not realising that it was a 14-year-old girl who'd made it. His actions afterwards were to try to make sure that she was okay. But the pile-on had started, and it continued and built. It's not okay, Australia, to go into a football stadium as a spectator and leave your respect at the gate. And it hurt. It hurt Adam. It hurt the game. And it hurt our identities as Australians. In the end, it hurts us all. At Reconciliation South Australia, we did an analysis of the 1,000 comments online to the advertiser. 10% of the racist rump of Australia who declare themselves as racist in surveys and have no intention of changing came out swinging. 50% of respondents were totally against what was happening and started to join the hashtag 37AdamGoodes and hashtag WeStandWithAdam movement. But the disturbing issue was that 40% of the respondents were in the category of, what's the problem here? Adam Goodes, as a privileged and rich footballer, should suck it up and not be so precious. The man was driven out of the game he loved because of racism. And the AFL did too little, too late. They thought that it would go away, and the booing intensified as a result. This is not okay, Australia. A new command I give to you: love one another as I have loved you. You must love one another. In the Uniting Church in Australia, next Wednesday, July the 10th, we celebrate the 30th anniversary of the covenant between the Uniting Aboriginal and Islander Christian Congress and the Uniting Church in Australia. This was a groundbreaking agreement and has really strong language that has stood the test of time. And in South Australia, we're celebrating the anniversary on Saturday evening at 6:30 p.m. at Adelaide West, Sir Donald Brevin Drive. All welcome. See Graham or myself over here if you want details for Yanakanai, a gathering to celebrate the covenant. We'll explore a little bit about the covenant now for you, just to get a taste of what it is. It's a 5-page document, and I would urge you to actually access this and read it if you've never read it. And certainly take opportunity to share it with other church members as well. The covenant is written with Pastor Bill Hollingsworth, who was the president of the Uniting Aboriginal Islander Christian Congress at the time. and it really is written in a way that says the non-Aboriginal church, with Dr. Jill Tabbert as president, spoke, and then Bill responded. Because it is pleasing to God to love one another, and it is our commitment to do so, we invite you on behalf of Congress members to develop a new relationship by entering into the struggle of those issues that presently are the cause of continuing injustice, resulting in broken relationships. So the President, Jill Tabbert, I apologise on behalf of the Assembly for all those wrongs done knowingly or unknowingly to your people by the Church, and seek your forgiveness. I ask you to help us discover ways to make amends. And the pledge from the Church. It is our desire to work in solidarity with the Uniting Aboriginal and Islander Christian Congress for the advancement of God's kingdom of justice and righteousness in this land. And we reaffirm the commitment made at the 1985 Assembly to do so. We want to bring discrimination to an end so that your people are no longer jailed in disproportionate numbers, and so that equal housing, health, education and employment opportunities are available for your people as for ours. To that end, we commit ourselves to work with you towards national and state policy changes, to build understanding between your people and ours in every locality, to build relationships which respect the right of your people to self-determination in the Church and in the wider society. Pastor Bill concludes. We pray that God will guide you together with us in developing a covenant to walk together practically so that the words of your statement may become a tangible expression of his justice and love for all creation. We ask you to remember this covenant by remembering that our land is now also sustaining your people by God's grace. Once again, an opportunity for you to discuss amongst yourselves. As Christians, what do you think we should be doing to respond to the call to build relationships which respect the right of your people to self-determination in the Church and in the wider society? I'll give you a few moments, and those online are welcome once again to put comments in the chat if they wish to. One more.
One more minute. Who would like to respond?
I just wanted to really, I guess, raise one of what I see as the inherent challenges in that, and so I'm fully supportive of, I think the only way to go is a way that is about developing relationships. Speaking personally, and a number of other Australians who never have an encounter or a relationship with Indigenous people, that raises for me an interesting question about how to go about that.
Thank you, Peter. Max.
Yeah, I think there's a question that comes before that one that's on the screen. Respectful relationships and all that sort of thing needs, even before that, for a respectful attitude towards Indigenous people to be developed. So I was at a certain congregation, best remain nameless, on Day of Mourning earlier this year, the Sunday before Australia Day, and I did about the minimum I could get away with mentioning Day of Mourning, and I was chatted about it afterwards. You know, goodness knows what would have happened if I built half the service around Day of Mourning. Until that kind of thing is overcome, that question on the screen can't even be addressed, I reckon.
One last comment. Dan.
I'm president of the Uniting Church Historical Society. It occurred to me after the referendum that people had really struggled with the change in policy between assimilation and self-determination. And I realised that many of our leaders had worked in Indigenous communities over in missions over the years. Bill Edwards, Jack Goodluck up north, Bernie Clark, have all written about their experience of having to make a decision to hand over responsibility from their role and handing over responsibility to the communities themselves. And it's quite an interesting, I think, experience that we share as the church. Once we were in charge, Mowanjum, A.P. Wylands, superintendent of the mission, but Bernie and Jack Goodluck and others really struggled, and then came to the clear decision that the way to go was to hand over and share the responsibility. Same thing happened in Redfern when many of the organisations like the Legal Service, Medical Service, the Block, Marawina and the Black Theatre all became organisations managed by effective leadership of Aboriginal people.
Thank you, Dan. Joel.
Just wanted to...
I was going to have the last comment with Dan, but...
Just wanted to respond in relation to the... you talked about the person from ABCB, Laura Tingle, and then the gentleman here talked the conversations that happened after morning in the morning. Have you noticed a pattern where when it's called out, when things are called out, you know, Laura had to be counselled by the board of the ABC. So when you know, strong, courageous people call it out, that word counsel gets said, oh, no, we can't say that. It's a counsel.
Could almost say cancelled. Not counselled. We'll have an opportunity to respond with questions and comments at the end as well. Esmond's given me 50 minutes. I'm trying to work within that. Our National Assembly in the Uniting Church has endorsed statements on combating racism since 1985. At the 10th Assembly in 2002, the following resolution was passed. Trusting that in Jesus Christ God has broken down barriers between all people and by the Holy Spirit is able to transform lives and heal communities. A, to recognise again that racism is a sin that reflects our alienation from God and one another and is compatible with the gospel. To reaffirm its commitment to work to overcome racism in Australia and beyond. To call on the Church to model the inclusive love of Christ, building communities of justice and love and practising respect and equality in all our relationships. And to urge the members of the Uniting Church, particularly those in leadership, to attend a Confronting Racism or Looking with New Eyes workshop to explore ways of working to eradicate racism. It might be time to bring forward a further Assembly resolution on combating racism. And I know that there are a few people who are interested in advancing that process through formal synod and Assembly channels. For there is no difference between Jew and Gentile. The same Lord is Lord of all and richly blesses all who call on him. For everyone who calls on the name of the Lord will be saved. Interesting that we talk about the Day of Mourning because the Day of Mourning group morphed into NAIDOC. You know, over time, this is actually what became NAIDOC. And so the NAIDOC Week theme for 2022 was Get Up, Stand Up, Show Up. It was a call for the Aboriginal community to show strength and solidarity and be part of the change that they want to see. NAIDOC Week starts on this Sunday with the annual ecumenical church service at Pilgrim Church at 6 p.m. This year's theme is Keep the Fire Burning, Black, Loud and Proud. Taken from the NAIDOC website, this year's theme celebrates the unyielding spirit of our communities and invites all to stand in solidarity, amplifying the voices that have long been silenced. The fire represents the enduring strength and vitality of Indigenous cultures passed down through generations despite the challenges faced. It is a symbol of connection to the land, to each other and to the rich tapestry of traditions that define Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples. As we honour this flame, we kindle the sparks of pride and unity, igniting a renewed commitment to acknowledging, preserving and sharing the cultural heritage that enriches our nation. Black, Loud and Proud encapsulates the unapologetic celebration of Indigenous identity, empowering us to stand tall in our heritage and assert our place in the modern world. This theme calls for a reclamation of narratives, an amplification of voices, an unwavering commitment to justice and equality. It invites all Australians to listen, learn and engage in meaningful dialogue, fostering a society where the wisdom and contributions of Indigenous peoples are fully valued and respected. Through our collective efforts, we can forge a future where the stories, traditions and achievements of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander communities are cherished and celebrated, enriching the fabric of the nation with the oldest living culture in the world. What a great theme to flow on from the period of mourning following the 2023 referendum.
This week, let's stand in solidarity with our Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander brothers and sisters and rededicate ourselves to truth-telling, raising our voices for justice and combating racism wherever it is seen to occur. Since October 14, 2023, I've not spoken to one of my Aboriginal friends or colleagues who's happy with the result of the referendum. According to the Reconciliation Australia Barometer 2022, mutual trust had been growing over the last decade between Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal people. It stood at about 50%. My guess is that the next Reconciliation Barometer at the end of this year will show that trust has been significantly broken. As Rosemary Wanganeen said on the banks of the Torrens on Invasion Day 2024, she's been immersed in grief and she's not been able to accept or conduct a welcome to country since the referendum. And that's from a woman who's been specialising in dealing with grief for decades. At the Yanakanai event at the Uniting College of Learning and Theology on October 27th last year, Auntie Denise Champion quoted from The Lord of the Rings by wisely saying, "We are where we are." That was so helpful. The reconciliation journey has shown that 40% of Australians got what was being asked for and 60% didn't. The young, the professionals, the inner city and Aboriginal people in remote communities responded. I won't get into the rights issues or the politics or the rights and wrongs of the campaigns, although I could go on for hours about that. What the referendum showed us was that there is a racist underbelly in this country that was tapped last year, and that racist underbelly diminishes us all. Anti-social media roared into life. Young Aboriginal people campaigning at shopping centres were vilified. Hate and division was poured out in the press, the suburbs, and sadly, at times, in our own church. Who are we as Australians? Who are we together in terms of our identity? The referendum put a mirror in front of our faces and showed us who we collectively are. And so the task is clear. We need to redouble our efforts towards reconciliation, and where we can, we need to find ways to close the gap in education, employment, housing, health, justice, family cohesiveness. And we need to stand tall in the face of racism. We have to call it out. We must speak out where we see injustice, and we have to name that it's not okay to live in a country where Eddie Betts' children can't feel comfortable throwing some hoops in their yard. Let's turn back to Manal and see what she has to say. She's a slam poet and this was performed at one of our reconciliation breakfasts in front of 1,800 guests, along with Alexis West. Thanks, Fergus.
Your call has been forwarded to an automatic voice message system. At the tone, please record your message. When you have finished recording, you may hang up or press 1.
Just change the screen, Fergus. Fergus? Fergus? Beautiful.
sick of being the victim or the villain or the hero.
There's just too much pressure on them all. I wanted to be that nameless face that just walks past the screen, and on the credit list they could call me waitress number 3. So I tried to camouflage to be like the bark in the trees.
The green of the grass.
Blue like the ocean, and I didn't splash.
I didn't splash.
I just wanted to feel like this skin that was supposed to be my protection wasn't constantly exposing me. And I held my breath.
And I held my breath as I tried and I tried to disappear until I couldn't hold it anymore.
Instinct pushed me to the surface, and I gasped as I grasped that last chance to stay alive. It was like removing the blankets when you realize you're suffocating.
Suddenly, all the monsters can see inside.
And there I was.
And there I was, a brown speck on white paper.
An afro among tamer names, a hijab among freshly groomed locks, and like the hands of a stranger pressing down on my chest and releasing, I was forced to breathe, so I did, and I kept breathing and gave up disappearing. Now,
I will not stand down or compromise.
I wear bright colours, mismatched patterns,
dance when I hear a good rhythm,
scream Allahu Akbar despite accusations of terrorism, and I say
what I need to say because I need to breathe, even if it gives me away.
We're called to be reconciled to Christ and God. We're called to be reconciled to each other. What a great prayer.
Feed your skin the nutrients it needs with Sukin certified organic rosehip oil 1990.
That's right, Fergus. I can repeat the great prayer. What a great prayer that we can all breathe equally. Stand tall, Australia. Call out racism. Speak up where systemic discrimination occurs. It's not okay to let the scourge of racism go unchecked. And I'd love to sit down and have a conversation with you about that. Amen. We've got some time for some questions. If you want to take my details, get in touch. They're on the screen. So any questions, comments, responses to tonight?
Fergus, are you going to have a roving mic?
Well, Mark's doing that.
You'll give it to the
He's the
person
man.
asking. Okay.
Someone indicates, then I'll pass it to them.
Thank you. I don't know how many of you people read the Saturday paper. A couple of weeks ago, Stan Grant has been writing an article every fortnight. I'm not sure how long ago, it might have been a month ago, it might have been a couple of weeks ago. One of the articles of Stan Grant, right, I thought was outstanding. Most of them that I read, I don't understand. It's far too deep for me. Wonderful stuff, but really, the one that he just recently wrote, he talked about what it meant to forgive and what it meant to be reconciled in the sense that one has to forgive the people who do you the damage. And I thought that was a really interesting point. I'm not doing justice to that article. If you can find the Saturday paper, a couple of weeks ago, have a read of it. It's well worth reading.
Thank you, Trevor. And in leaving Q&A, Stan actually said something very similar. And he spoke at Queensland Synod last year, and his thoughts are quite incisive. And what he's saying is that we don't really get reciprocity. We don't understand the relationship of give and take. Aboriginal people give and give and give. They often give nothing in return. And reciprocity means that we've actually got to give something back. What Stan was saying is that he was very aware that some of the things he'd said or done or, been interviewed deliberately in terms of view about colonisation at the time of the coronation was picked up and he was pilloried for it. And yet, he was committed to saying, do you want to keep standing on the ships, looking towards the shore, or do you want to stand with the Aboriginal community on the shore and understand what it's like to be colonised? So we've got a lot to learn in that area. More comments or questions? Marie.
I remember meeting with you and some other Reconciliation SA people around a similar program in health. Was it resources, inertia, too hard? What stopped that one getting off the ground?
We were down at the Living Ghana Cultural Centre, my memory's saying, and we were focusing upon reconciliation action and whether health systems would actually take on reconciliation action, and some have. I know I did a lot of work after finishing at Reconciliation SA, consulting with NAO and the Northern Adelaide Local Health Network, and they built a reconciliation action plan. But at the end of the day, what you do in Blackwood Reconciliation Group and the actions you take are probably as strong as the big system changes, because some of those words are fantastic, but when you actually scratch it and see what actions are there, it's tough. Joel, you're doing a bit of reconciliation action planning with the big government department at the moment. How do you find that?
One of the biggest challenges that I see in my role is, so we had a referendum last year, and obviously it was overwhelmingly defeated, but my challenge is to, reconciliation is two groups coming together after a conflict. And so my issue will be, I think there's a couple of challenges. As a proud Aboriginal man, I might have Aboriginal colleagues that says, you know what, I don't care about reconciliation now because of the result of the referendum. Or the quiet racists or racism that we see that could happen. So that's a challenge. The referendum was challenging as an Aboriginal man. I am a realist. I didn't do much of the campaigning stuff because you guys saw my two beautiful children. Ava is 11, my son Isaiah is 8. What scared me the most was the conversation we had to have with them on Monday morning when they went to school. And I'm a politics nerd. I watch all the elections, regardless of what state. And I still remember my son coming in 7:30 that night. Dad, what's the score? Because he saw all the things on the TV. Because he's footy mad, or sport mad. But I think one of the challenges from that was I took him I took him to a birthday party the next day, and I'm broken. I have to do the parent thing, the dad thing. And I walk into the party, and I'm there for 2 minutes, and someone says, like, a non-Aboriginal person comes up to me and says, "Oh, I know why I lost." And so he gave me the lecture for 15 minutes about why I lost, and you know, I googled how I was feeling afterwards, and I was grieving.
And that's real. So,
just want to make a comment about the referendum and the situation in South Australia. And I'm thinking, I'd like to be able to support the new council in South Australia. We have a Uniting Church woman on that council, and only Denise's daughter, Candice, and there may be others, I don't know. Graham, you might know who's on there. But I'm interested in how to support that. I mean, I made contact with Candy and had a talk with her, and I pray for her. And I would just like to, I have real hope for that council that we have in South Australia. And I think that our prayers need to be with them all the time. I think the eyes of the nation could be on us. I don't know. I'm hoping that they are, and I want that to succeed. I really want it from the bottom of my heart for it to succeed. And for those people to know that they are respected and that their thoughts and ideas will be received. I don't know what others think or what you think about that, Mark, how we could encourage and lead in that way as a church even.
I think tonight is about, continuing to invite the church to step up. And if there are aspects of supporting the voice that the church can do, we need to do that. And you're right, we've got people who are participating at that level. So what is it that we can do to spread that word? No. Esmond?
We sort of often hear that whatever we're doing is not working. I'm wondering if there are examples of things that are working that can be shared around, which would create a more positive ambience for reconciliation. Meredith and I are aware of a school called Nudu College, which teaches Kaurna language. And if you visit there, half of the students are Aboriginal, half are not. The relationships are wonderful. The school is a really happy place. We've been to some of the concerts they have put on. If you go to the art room, there's a big sign, "We are artists." If you go to the music room, "We are musicians." There's so much stuff done there to build people's self-confidence and identity, but nobody knows about this college. I think they're doing a great job. And the principal was a principal in a state school that had a lot of Aboriginal kids for a long time and was very successful, and the department said, "We don't want you to do this anymore." So he went and started this private school himself, and he's got lots of benefactors funding it, and they're doing a great job, but we don't know about it.
Thanks, Esmond. I was told that we need to finish at 8:15 and we're right on, so I'm not going to hold anyone from their cup of tea. But if you have a final comment, no.
Mark, can you just make sure that we've got references to some of the things that you referred to so that we can look them up?
Absolutely.
To answer the question over there about examples of what's happening, the event that Mark referred to, Yanakanai, which is happening on Saturday night, I think is quite important for Uniting Church. We've had 78 registrations, which is pretty good, but spread the word, because this is going to be one of those amazing opportunities to sit down, white fellas, mostly, be quiet and listen, We got a chance to hear from the theologian in residence of the Uniting Church, Reverend Dr. Auntie Denise Champion, to hear her stories, to hear her background, to hear her perspectives. And we got a chance to hear Ken Sumner from Malantry Country give another perspective on how the covenant journey has been going over that 30 years, maybe where we've just strayed, maybe we could learn some lessons about how to do things better in the future. And we've got younger people like Candice hopefully coming, and Rani, and Sean Wheatroot, Jordan Sumner, and we're also going to have Joe Palmer as a non-Indigenous leader, and Jesse Sires talking about their perspectives as well as younger people. So in terms of the sort of impetus of how we sort of move forward, there's an opportunity, a forum to really start to think, what can we do that's different ourselves? Because there'll be an opportunity for reflection, for quiet reflection, for recording your own thoughts about and feelings about where you're going, and to put them into a Coolamon as part of the event tomorrow on Saturday night. So I commend that to you, particularly because yesterday I heard one of the most remarkable talks I've ever heard in my life from Auntie Denise at the Australian New Zealand Theological Conference, where she spoke for some time. That's the second in two talks that are both absolutely watershed moments, I think, in Australian theology. And if you get a chance to catch them online, please do. But if you come Saturday night, you'll have a chance to hear the essence of what she's talking about. As a woman who's connected to a story that goes back 60,000 years right here in South Australia, that coexisted with megafauna, that still comes out and believes that God was with her, God's been with her people all those years before whitefellas arrived. And she's asking hard questions about how the church can start to wake up to what the gospel's really about. That's not a bad finishing for this one. Thank you, Graham.
Thank you, Mark. Certainly, we've had a lot of things to stimulate our thinking, and it's been good to share the questions and hear comments from people. So I'd like you to put your hands together for Mark for his presentation and all the ideas that we heard and so on. Just a few housekeeping things. We do have a feedback sheet, which is on the corner of the table if you didn't collect one coming in. We do like people to fill it out. Simple sheet, there are pencils out there and a box that you could leave them in. And we do take notice of the comments that are made about our presentations. Our next session is on the 1st of August, and Jenny Hughes is speaking about worship, the progressive edge of theology, which sounds to me like an interesting topic. There are brochures on the table if you haven't got the year's brochure, and you can take that as well. So, thank you. Oh, there's a bit of information here about Jenny. Hang on a minute. She told me, or she's sent in, just this little bit I'll read. Worship shapes our faith, and our faith shapes our worship. Often, the first place we articulate a new understanding, whether of God, ourselves, or all humanity and life, is in our worship. So it sounds like it's going to be an interesting presentation. So thank you for coming, and thank you for the online viewers, and we can now join in light refreshments.